There's a lie you've been told your entire life. A lie so pervasive that it's probably the reason you're watching this video right now. The lie is this: discipline requires feeling ready, that you need to wait for the right moment, the right energy, the right mood to finally take action. But here's what nobody wants to admit: that moment will never come. And the people who seem naturally disciplined, the ones who work out consistently, who build businesses, who create while others consume, they're not waiting for motivation either. They discovered something far more powerful. A psychological mechanism that bypasses the need for feeling ready entirely. And it's not what you think. What I'm about to show you isn't another motivational speech about pushing through pain or becoming mentally tougher. This is about understanding a fundamental glitch in human psychology. A glitch that once you see it, once you truly understand how it operates in your mind every single day, you can exploit it. You can turn it into your greatest advantage. And the best part, it works precisely because you don't feel like doing anything. Over the next few minutes, we're going to dismantle everything you thought you knew about self-discipline. We'll expose why your current strategy is actually designed to fail. And we'll build together a framework, a genuine psychological exploit that makes action happen even when every fiber of your being resists. If you've ever felt paralyzed by procrastination, if you've ever despised yourself for not following through, this isn't going to shame you. It's going to show you that you've been playing a rigged game, and now finally you're about to learn the actual rules. Let's start with a question most people never ask. Why don't you feel like doing things? Seriously, have you ever stopped to examine what's actually happening in your mind during that moment of resistance? Because understanding this is the difference between spending your life fighting yourself and spending it moving forward effortlessly. Here's what's really going on. Every time you think about a task you need to do, your brain performs an instant calculation. It's measuring the gap between where you are right now, your current state of comfort, and where you need to be, the effort required to complete that task. Psychologists call this the action state orientation gap. And here's the critical part. The larger that gap appears, the more resistance you feel. It's not actually about the task itself. It's about the perceived distance. When you think, I need to write a 20-page report, your brain doesn't see a task. It sees a canyon, an enormous chasm between your current state sitting comfortably and the end state, a completed report. That gap feels insurmountable, so your nervous system does what it's designed to do. It activates the threat response. Writing that report becomes psychologically equivalent to facing a physical danger. Your body literally produces the same stress hormones. And this is where it gets fascinating. Your brain, trying to protect you from this perceived threat, offers you a deal. Just feel better first, it whispers. Wait until you're more motivated. Wait until you have more energy. Wait until the conditions are perfect. This sounds reasonable. It sounds like self-care, but it's a trap. Because that better feeling, that motivation, that perfect moment, it only comes after action, not before it. This is the fundamental glitch I mentioned. You're waiting for a feeling that can only be generated by the very action you're avoiding. It's a psychological catch-22. And every single day you wait for readiness, you're reinforcing this trap, making it stronger, more automatic, more powerful. Tim Feichel, one of the leading researchers on procrastination, discovered something profound in his studies. The procrastinators he studied weren't lazy. They were trapped in emotional regulation failure. They weren't avoiding the task. They were avoiding the negative feelings associated with the task. And by doing so, they created a loop that guaranteed those negative feelings would intensify. Think about the last time you procrastinated on something important. Maybe it was a project, a difficult conversation, starting a fitness routine. In the moment of avoidance, you felt temporary relief, right? You escaped the discomfort. But what happened later? The task didn't disappear, it grew, it accumulated psychological weight, the gap became wider, the resistance became stronger, you felt worse, not better, and then you needed even more motivation to start, which, of course, never came. This is why the traditional advice of just push through or be more disciplined fails so catastrophically. You're not addressing the actual mechanism, you're just trying to force your way across a gap that your brain perceives as life-threatening. It's like telling someone with a phobia of heights to just climb the ladder. The fear isn't rational, so rational arguments won't defeat it. But what if there was a way to collapse that gap entirely? What if you could make the distance between your current state and action so small that your brain couldn't generate resistance? What if, instead of fighting the glitch, you could exploit it. In the next part, we'll explore the most counterintuitive principle in behavioral psychology, a principle that successful people use instinctively, often without even knowing why it works. You're about to discover why the secret to discipline isn't found in making yourself feel ready, but in making readiness completely irrelevant. Now that you understand the action step, we need to talk about the single most powerful technique for collapsing it. This technique is so simple that most people dismiss it immediately. And that dismissal, that instant rejection, is exactly why they stay stuck. Because what I'm about to describe sounds too easy to work, but it's backed by decades of research in behavioral psychology and neuroscience. The technique is this: never commit to the full action. Only commit to 2 minutes. Not 2 minutes as a warm-up to the real thing. Not 2 minutes as a stepping stone. Literally commit only to 2 minutes and give yourself full permission to stop afterward. This isn't a trick. This isn't reverse psychology. This is a direct assault on the psychological mechanism that's been keeping you paralyzed. Here's why it works with surgical precision. Remember the action-state gap, the chasm your brain perceives between comfort and effort? When you commit to an entire workout, to writing a full article, to studying for 3 hours, that gap is massive. Your threat response activates. Resistance builds. But when you commit to exactly 2 minutes, something extraordinary happens. The gap becomes microscopic. Your brain scans for danger and finds none. 2 minutes? That's not threatening. That's barely an inconvenience. B.J. Fogg, who founded the Behavior Design Lab at Stanford, spent over 20 years studying this phenomenon. What he discovered is that human behavior change doesn't fail because of lack of motivation or discipline. It fails because of what he calls the motivation wave problem. Motivation is unstable. It rises and falls. If your ability to act depends on high motivation, you're building your life on quicksand. But here's where it gets interesting. Fogg found that tiny behaviors so small they seem ridiculous, don't require motivation at all. They slip underneath your brain's resistance radar. And once you're in motion, even tiny motion, a different psychological mechanism takes over: behavioral momentum. This is a neurological fact, not a metaphor. Once you begin an action, continuing it requires less mental energy than starting it. Newton's first law applies to psychology as well. An object in motion stays in motion. When you commit to 2 minutes of writing and actually do it, stopping after 2 minutes actually feels harder than continuing. Your brain has already paid the startup cost. The resistance is gone, the gap is closed. Let me give you a concrete example. You need to work out but feel absolutely zero motivation. The traditional approach says, come on, just do it, push through, be strong. And your brain says, no, that's painful, that's a threat, we're staying here. Stalemate. Now try the 2-minute approach. Tell yourself with complete honesty, I will put on my workout clothes and walk outside for exactly 2 minutes. Then I can come back inside. What happens? The resistance evaporates. 2 minutes isn't scary. You put on the clothes, you step outside, and now something remarkable occurs. You're already dressed. You're already outside. The gap between where you are and a full workout has collapsed dramatically. Most of the time, you'll continue, not because you suddenly found motivation, but because stopping now requires more energy than continuing. But here's the crucial part that most people miss. Even on the days when you actually do stop after 2 minutes, you still win, because you're training your brain that starting is safe. You're breaking the association between the task and threat. You're building what psychologists call action precedent. Each time you honor the 2-minute commitment, you're depositing evidence into your nervous system that says, this task doesn't hurt me. And there's another layer to this. When you commit to the full task and fail, you're reinforcing failure. Your brain learns, I can't do this, I'm not disciplined, I'm weak. But when you commit to 2 minutes and succeed, even if you stop after 2 minutes, you're reinforcing success. You did exactly what you said you'd do. Your brain learns, I keep my commitments, I follow through. This is identity-level change happening through the back door. You're not trying to become disciplined, you're just doing 2 minutes. But after 50 successful 2-minute commitments, who have you become? Someone who takes action regardless of feelings. Someone whose word to themselves means something. Someone who is, by definition, disciplined. The resistance you feel isn't telling you the truth about the task. It's telling you about the perceived gap. And when you make the gap disappear, the resistance has nothing to grip onto. But there's still a problem. What about the days when even 2 minutes feels impossible? What about when the resistance is so strong that you can't even begin? Is there a way to act when paralysis is complete? In the next section, we're going to explore something even more powerful, a technique used by hostage negotiators and elite athletes, a way to bypass your conscious resistance entirely by speaking directly to the part of your brain that controls action. This is where it gets truly fascinating. You've learned how to collapse the action-state gap using the 2-minute rule, but there's a deeper psychological mechanism we need to address, because sometimes even 2 minutes feels impossible. Sometimes the resistance is so overwhelming that your mind won't let you start at all. And this is where most discipline advice completely falls apart. What you need to understand is this: the part of you that feels resistant and the part of you that wants to take action are not in conflict by accident. They're both trying to protect you. Your present self wants comfort and safety now. Your future self wants growth and achievement later. And the problem is, these two versions of you are in constant negotiation, except you're negotiating blindly, with no strategy, no framework, no leverage. Here's where it gets interesting. Hal Hershfield, a psychologist at UCLA, conducted a series of groundbreaking experiments on what he calls temporal self-continuity. What he discovered is genuinely unsettling. Most people feel about as much connection to their future self as they do to a complete stranger. When you think about yourself in 6 months or a year, your brain lights up in the same regions it does when you think about another person. This explains everything. Why would you sacrifice for a stranger? Why would you endure discomfort now for someone you barely know? The answer is, you wouldn't, and you don't. Every time you choose immediate comfort over long-term benefit, you're not being weak. You're treating your future self like someone else's problem. But here's the exploit. If you can increase your connection to your future self, you can literally change the negotiation. Hershfield found that people who felt more connected to their future selves made dramatically better decisions. They saved more money, exercised more consistently, and made fewer impulsive choices. The behavior didn't change because of willpower, it changed because of relationship. So how do you build this relationship? How do you make your future self feel real, present, worthy of sacrifice? There's a technique that sounds absurdly simple but is devastatingly effective. Before you face a moment of resistance, you visualize your future self in explicit detail, not vague fantasies about success. Specific, sensory, almost tangible detail. Here's how it works in practice. It's evening. You're exhausted. You need to work on your business, study for an exam, or prepare for tomorrow. Every part of you wants to collapse on the couch and watch Netflix. This is the moment. But instead of fighting yourself, you sit quietly for 60 seconds. You close your eyes and you imagine with as much detail as possible your future self waking up tomorrow morning. You see them clearly. What are they wearing? What does their face look like? Are they stressed, rushing, panicked because nothing got done tonight? Or are they calm, prepared, moving through the morning with confidence because the work was completed? You imagine them specifically. You feel what they're feeling. You see the consequence of your choice tonight playing out in their lived experience tomorrow morning. This isn't motivational visualization. This is psychological bridge building. You're making your future self real. You're transforming them from an abstract concept into a person you can see, feel, and care about. And when that happens, the negotiation changes completely. It's no longer, should I push through discomfort for some vague future benefit? It becomes, am I willing to hurt that person, the one I just saw so clearly, for 30 minutes of comfort right now? Most of the time, when the future self is vivid enough, the answer is no. Not because you became more disciplined, but because you changed who you're negotiating with. But there's an even more powerful layer to this. You can also negotiate with your present self from the perspective of gratitude. Think about this. Who are you right now because of decisions your past self made? If you're in decent health, it's because your past self chose to eat reasonably well, to move occasionally, to sleep. If you have any skills, any knowledge, any relationships, they exist because your past self endured discomfort to build them. Right now, in this moment, you are experiencing the gift of actions taken by someone who couldn't see the full benefit, who felt the same resistance you feel but acted anyway. And that version of you, that past self, they gave you this moment. What are you going to give your future self? When you frame discipline this way, it stops being a battle against yourself. It becomes an act of generosity, an act of care. You're not forcing yourself, you're honoring the chain of selves, past, present, and future, who are all you, who all deserve your protection. And here's what nobody tells you about this technique. It gets easier the more you do it. Every time you make a decision that benefits your future self, you strengthen the neural pathways of temporal connection. You literally rewire your brain to care more about that person. The negotiation becomes less combative. The choice becomes clearer. But let's be honest. Sometimes, even with crystal clear visualization, even with deep connection to your future self, you still don't act. The resistance is still too strong. Your body won't move. Your mind won't engage. Is that the end? Is that when discipline simply isn't possible? Absolutely not. Because there's one final technique, one more psychological exploit that works even when everything else fails. And it's based on a principle so counterintuitive that when I first learned it, I didn't believe it could work. But it does, every single time. In the next part, you'll discover why the most disciplined people don't rely on discipline at all. They rely on something far more primal, far more powerful, and far more reliable than willpower could ever be. We've talked about collapsing the action state gap. We've talked about building connection with your future self. But now we need to address the uncomfortable truth that everyone avoids. Sometimes, even with all the techniques, all the understanding, all the best intentions, you still won't do it. The resistance will win. And this is where most people conclude they're simply not disciplined enough, not strong enough, not committed enough. But that conclusion is wrong. The problem isn't your strength. The problem is that you're still giving yourself the option to fail. And as long as that option exists, your brain will take it. This is where we need to talk about commitment devices, psychological structures that remove choice entirely. Here's what makes this so powerful. Your brain is constantly calculating cost-benefit ratios. When you face a task you don't want to do, your brain weighs the pain of doing it against the pain of not doing it. And in most cases, the pain of not doing it is abstract, distant, easy to ignore. So your brain chooses avoidance. It's logical, really. Why suffer now for a vague future consequence you can't even feel? But what if you could make the consequence of not acting immediate, concrete, and painful? What if the cost of avoidance exceeded the cost of action? Your brain would perform the same calculation and reach a different conclusion, not because you became more disciplined, but because you changed the equation. This is exactly what a commitment device does. It artificially raises the cost of inaction to a level that your resistance can't overcome. And before you think this is about punishment or self-flagellation, understand this. Commitment devices aren't about suffering, they're about strategic architecture. You're designing choice out of the system. Dan Ariely, behavioral economist at Duke University, has studied this extensively. In one famous experiment, he gave students the option to set their own deadlines for assignments throughout the semester. Students could choose any deadlines they wanted, or they could submit everything on the last day. The rational choice, according to standard economic theory, would be maximum flexibility. Keep all options open, submit on the last day if you want. But here's what Ariely found. The students who performed best were those who imposed strict deadlines on themselves, even though those deadlines came with penalties if missed. They voluntarily reduced their own flexibility. They made their future choices for them in advance, and they succeeded because of it, not despite it. This is the principle. You don't trust your future self to make the right choice in the moment because your future self will be tired, distracted, and facing the same resistance you are now. So you make the choice now, when you're clear-headed, and you structure the environment so that choice is locked in. Let me give you concrete examples. You want to work out consistently but never do. Traditional approach: rely on motivation each morning. Commitment device approach: hire a trainer and pay in advance for 12 sessions. Now, the cost of not showing up isn't just missing a workout. It's wasting money and disappointing another human who's expecting you. Your brain's calculation changes instantly. You want to finish a creative project but keep procrastinating. Traditional approach: tell yourself you'll do it when inspiration strikes. Commitment device approach: announce a public deadline on social media. Tell your audience you'll release it on a specific date. Now, the cost of not finishing isn't just private disappointment. It's public embarrassment, loss of credibility, visible failure. The equation changes. You want to stop mindlessly scrolling social media at night. Traditional approach: try to resist each evening. Commitment device approach: give your phone to a family member at 8 p.m. every night, or use an app that locks you out completely. You've removed the choice. The resistance has nowhere to go. Do you see what's happening? You're not becoming more disciplined. You're becoming smarter about human psychology. You're recognizing that in the moment willpower is unreliable, so you're using high-clarity moments to bind your low-clarity moments. But here's where most people get this wrong. They think commitment devices need to be extreme, expensive, or complicated. They don't. The most effective commitment devices are often absurdly simple. The key isn't the size of the consequence. It's the certainty that there will be a consequence. One of my favorite examples is from a writer who struggled with daily writing. He made a simple commitment device. Every day he didn't write at least 200 words, he had to donate $10 to a political cause he despised, not a charity he disliked, a cause he actively opposed. The amount wasn't devastating, but the psychological sting of funding something he hated was enough. He hasn't missed a day in 3 years. That's the beauty of this. You're not white-knuckling through resistance. Engineering a situation where resistance leads to greater pain than action. Your brain does the math automatically and chooses action. No heroics required. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds like manipulation, like I'm tricking myself. And you're right, it is manipulation. But here's the question you need to ask. Is your current approach working? Are you achieving your goals by waiting for motivation? Are you becoming who you want to become by hoping discipline will magically appear? If not, then it's time to stop treating yourself like you're supposed to be superhuman and start treating yourself like what you are, a biological organism with predictable psychological patterns that can be engineered for success. But there's one final level we need to explore, because even with all these techniques, there's a deeper question lurking underneath everything. Why do this at all? Why force yourself to act when you don't feel like it? What's the actual point of discipline? In this final section, we're going to confront something that changes everything. The real reason most people fail at discipline isn't technique, it's meaning. And once you understand this final piece, everything else falls into place. After everything we've covered, the techniques, the psychological mechanisms, the commitment devices, there's one crucial element that determines whether any of this will actually work long term. And it's the element most productivity advice completely ignores. Meaning, here's the brutal truth. You can use every technique in this video. You can collapse action state gaps, visualize your future self, and create commitment devices. But if the actions you're forcing yourself to take don't connect to something deeper, something that genuinely matters to you, you will eventually burn out. Because discipline without meaning isn't discipline, it's just suffering. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, discovered this in the most extreme conditions imaginable. In the concentration camps, he observed that the prisoners who survived longest weren't necessarily the strongest or healthiest. They were the ones who had a reason to survive, a purpose that extended beyond the immediate horror. Frankl concluded that humans can endure almost anything if they have a strong enough why. This applies directly to discipline. Every action you force yourself to take has a cost. Physical energy, mental effort, the discomfort of resistance. If that cost is being paid toward nothing, toward goals you don't actually care about, toward a life you're not even sure you want, your nervous system will eventually rebel. And it should, because meaningless suffering is actually irrational. This is why so many people fail at discipline. Not because they don't know the techniques, but because they're trying to discipline themselves toward goals they don't genuinely value. They want to work out because society says they should look a certain way. They want to build a business because social media makes it seem like success. They want to be productive because everyone else is hustling. But those aren't real motivations, they're borrowed desires, and you cannot sustain discipline on borrowed desires. It's psychologically impossible. So before you use any technique from this video, you need to ask yourself a harder question. Not, how do I force myself to be disciplined? But what am I being disciplined for? What is the actual purpose? What does this action build toward? If you removed all external validation, all social pressure, all comparison to others, would you still want this outcome? If the answer is no, if you're uncertain, if the goal feels hollow, then stop. Because you're about to invest enormous energy into something that won't fulfill you even if you succeed. And that's the worst possible outcome, achieving a goal you never actually wanted. But if the answer is yes, if you can articulate clearly why this matters to you personally, specifically, deeply, then everything changes. The techniques become tools, not torture. The resistance becomes something you're willing to face because the destination is worth it. Here's how to build this foundation. Take whatever goal or habit you're trying to build discipline around and ask why it matters 5 times. Each answer should go deeper than the last. For example, I want to work out regularly. Why? To be healthier. Why does that matter? So I have energy for my kids. Why does that matter? Because I want to be present in their lives, not exhausted and checked out. Why does that matter? Because my own father was absent and I refuse to repeat that pattern. Now you have something real. Now you have meaning. And when you're lying in bed at 6 a.m. and every part of you wants to stay under the covers, you're not just fighting for a workout. You're fighting for your kids. You're fighting against a generational pattern. That's different. That's powerful enough to overcome resistance. The most disciplined people don't have superhuman willpower. They have clarity of purpose so strong that the choice becomes obvious. They're not forcing themselves. They're honoring something they value more than temporary comfort. And here's the final, most important point. Discipline is not the goal. The life you build with it is the goal. Discipline is just the mechanism, the bridge between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. But if you don't know where that bridge is leading, why would you ever cross it? So right now, before you click away from this video, I want you to do something. Identify one action you've been avoiding, something you know you should do but haven't. And instead of asking, how do I force myself to do this, ask, why does this actually matter to me? Dig until you find real meaning, not someone else's meaning, yours. Because once you have that clarity, the techniques work effortlessly. The 2-minute rule becomes a tool you're eager to use. The future self-visualization becomes vivid because you care about that person's life. The commitment devices become natural because you're committed to the outcome, not just the action. Discipline isn't about becoming a robot. It's about becoming deliberate. It's about making your actions match your values instead of your impulses. And when those things align, when what you do reflects what you truly care about, you don't need to force anything anymore. The action happens, not because you're disciplined, but because you finally connected your daily choices to your deepest reasons for living. Now I want to know from you. What's the one action you've been avoiding, and what's the real reason it matters? Comment below, because the simple act of articulating it is already the first step across that bridge. And if this video gave you a new way to think about discipline, if it showed you that the problem was never your character but your approach, then subscribe, because we're going deeper into the psychology of human behavior, beyond the surface level advice, into the mechanisms that actually create lasting change.